Business ownership has never been hotter, but how do you do it? That's where I come in. Allow me to guide you on your journey. Welcome to Ion Franchise. This episode sponsored by SEO Samba. Empower your franchise with predictable results and AI-driven marketing. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another fabulous episode of Ion Franchising. And I'm your host, Lance Graulich. So we're gonna paint the country right now with a gentleman that is probably the most persistent guest I have ever had. We've talked, and I've been wanting to have him on the show for the longest time. And here he is, Richard Gould, the founder of, obviously, Richard's Painting, of course. Welcome to the show, Mr. Richard Gould.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And you're correct, persistence is something I strive on because that's all I have. I'm not the most talented. I'm not the smartest. And so I use that little talent to get me as far as I can. So
Well,
thank you
Richard,
for having me.
it is my pleasure. You are absolutely welcome. And, you know, your franchisees, I would imagine if they were all here on this call, would tell me how persistent you are, fighting for them, helping them. And isn't that what franchising is all about? They want somebody in their corner.
They certainly do. Franchising so far is a different world than most people ever experience. There's a lot of moving parts, but the thing that I love so far about franchising is just having an effect on people's lives in such a positive way that you never thought you could, in your whole life.
Yeah. Well, let's go way back. How did Richard's Painting come about? How did it become a franchise system? I would imagine you had some painting experience before Richard's was born.
Yes, I'm a painter at heart. I've been painting since I'm 19 years old. Started, with as simple as a friend of mine asking, "Hey, do you want to want to go paint?" And I said, "Sure, let's go do it." So I end up working for somebody. His name is Don Greer, still alive, 88 years old, great guy.
Shout out to Don.
Yeah, he's the person who made my life what it is. He doesn't realize it every day, but he did. And because of him, I worked for him for 7, 8 years. He's ready to retire. I ended up buying the business from him and running it for another 5 or 6 years. And I was in New Jersey at the time, and I was getting to the point where I wanted to do something different, move in a different direction. So I moved to North Carolina, sold the business, sold everything I had, moved to North Carolina, and moved to the great area of Salisbury, North Carolina. Most people don't know about it, but if you get here, it's a small town, just like many small towns in America. And trying to start a business in a small town, especially being from the north and moving to the south, you could be challenging. And I discovered pretty quickly that it's way easier to buy a business than it was to start one from scratch. And in that process, going from knowing nobody, having no connections, not even knowing where the streets or houses were to go to, I turned that business into, $1 million plus business every year for, the last 10 years plus. So I wanted to grow, right? How do you grow a business, if you don't really want to travel? So
Yeah.
that I did not want to do. I didn't want to drive an hour, 2 hours away to be doing our work. First, because the money doesn't change no matter how far away you go. So I thought about franchising as a way to grow the business and have others who had as much skin in the game and had as much desire for it to be successful as I did. So
Yeah.
what I did was I went and started another location in Mooresville, Lake Norman. If anybody knows where that is, a really nice area.
Nice area.
Yeah, it's a great area. And we started another location. And I wanted to prove to myself, well, is it because I'm that great, or is it because the business is that great? And so we did that, and within 2 years, we were doing well over $350,000, 400,000 in that range. I said, okay, it's not just me. It can survive with.
Wonderful. So where did franchising really enter your thought process? I mean, looking at McDonald's, watching the movie The Founder, everybody has their own experience for how they either perceive franchising or why they think it might be a good idea.
Well, I'll tell you, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is really where I got my desire to franchise because I was, I'm curious. I'm a person who didn't graduate high school, didn't go to college. I always joke around and say I didn't like going to school for free. I couldn't imagine paying for it. So that was always my thought process. Not saying it was right or wrong, but that's what it was. So I do things more by observing, talking, making relationships, and I was truthfully watching at that time was like Monster Tree Service, was a big brand that was growing and growing, and I think Franchise Fastlane was the company that was representing them. So I
Yes.
just reached out to them and said, "Hey, I'm looking to franchise my business." And somebody taught, "Oh, they said we're looking for a painting company." I said, "This is great." And then they had a question, "Do you have an FDD?" And I was like, what's that? I didn't even know. Like, I didn't know you needed one. So, long story short, he puts Ryan, who now is not there anymore with Franchise Sidekick, I think what they're doing now. But anyhow, so they he puts me in touch with Chris Connor, who runs Franchise Marketing Systems. He helps me get my FDD together, and
Well, let me just tell you, that is my buddy, Chris Connor from
great guy.
Franchise
Love that
Marketing
guy.
Systems. And I love to hear that. I had no idea that you set up your franchise system through Chris. So
Oh yeah, no,
shout out to
he's a great guy.
FMS. That's fantastic.
Yep. I mean, there's, so the whole point of this, everything that we do in life, yourself, business, meeting people, making connections, not being scared to ask. LinkedIn's a great way to communicate, and it gives you the opportunity to reach out to people like Lance Graulich, who over a year and a half ago I first started messaging him, and then he responded, and then he gave me his actual personal number. And I started texting him and saying, "Hey, remember me?" I'd send him funny memes like I'm still here waiting, to get on the show. And so persistence, gosh, we can talk about that part of it, but
Yeah.
I think with French in general. So LinkedIn was the first step. And my thoughts were, well, if they can sell a tree service, how hard could it be to sell painting?
Yeah.
And so that was really my starting of saying, hey, I think I could, we can do this.
Yeah. I love
Um,
it. So let's talk about Richards. So
yes.
there's a lot of painting franchises. Describe exactly what Richards Painting is all about, including the investment.
That's a great question. To be honest, sometimes I struggle talking about this. Why, I don't know, but even though it's our business and I love it so much, it's hard. But the basic thing is what I saw a gap in the market, and especially in painting franchises, where most painting franchises, whether they're the biggest or the smallest, they have a similar business model where it's subcontractors, it's a volume business, and that's how they operate. Our business is quite different. We are looking to work in smaller markets, but we can also be successful in large markets. We have a much lower startup cost, a much lower operating cost. Typically our franchisees don't spend over $1,000 a month on marketing. And that's, forever. And over time, they spend less because our business grows so well organically. You don't need to spend lots and lots of money. Now, sales are relative. If you want to go out and spend $5,000 a month on marketing, well, your sales better be relative. But if you're spending, $500 a month, it's the sales are relative to those numbers. And
Yeah.
so the other big thing about our business is we're really more about the customer. We're about the relationship. We're about the experience. And in doing that, we hire, painters, individually. We don't use subcontractors, where we can
Yeah.
have really great people inside of people's homes and businesses. And I think those are the things that separate us the most.
Yeah, that is something that comes up often. Some brands are very proud that they use subcontractors, and other brands are very proud that, hey, these are our employees. We're building a great company culture. And
No,
and
it's where it
so
starts.
yeah, and so I love that you are proud to say, look, these are our employees. What are you seeing these days in the labor market? It seems people are still complaining it's difficult to find people. What is your secret, if you will, to attracting the best employees?
It's pretty simple. I've heard the same thing for 30 years in painting. Can never find good people. I hear, every business say they can't find good people. Well, the truth is, it takes work to find good people. Good people don't just show up, right? And sometimes you have to have people who maybe aren't perfect to start with. They turn into great people, right? And so you have to, personality is always the first, instinct. Skill is not always the first thing that we look at. You gotta have a great personality, got to be willing to work with others, and you got to be willing to just be a part of a team. And so, the good thing about painting is it's not rocket science. We're not curing
Yeah.
cancer here, right? We're just putting paint on walls and solving people's problems, right? So, you
But there
know,
are happy colors, I've learned.
there are great colors. There's happy, sad, cold, cool, hot, warm. They're all different terms you can use for paint. But at the
More
end of
on
the
that in
day,
another episode.
we have plenty of time, yes. So finding employees just takes work, right? It just takes the patience to know that typically you're going to hire 2 or 3 people to find the right one. And so as long as you're willing to put the work in and then build a team, our location here that I'm still, still in charge of in Salisbury, North Carolina, we have employees who have been here for 10, 12, 14 years.
Yeah.
Now I have employees who've been with me are now franchisees,
Yeah.
which is even prouder.
That is fantastic. And that's really a testament to what you're doing. When employees become franchisees, that's pretty incredible. Did you self-finance anybody, or they were able to find the funds in order to launch their franchise?
I think you know the answer to that question, Lance.
Yeah.
So there's a lot, yeah, there was self-financing, there's low financing, there's all different things you do to help people,
Yeah.
right? Because Richard's Painting is not just about trying to be the fastest growing, the best painting franchise ever. We're just trying to be the best Richard's Painting we can be.
Yeah.
And so when you have good quality people, you're going to try to help those people succeed. And whether it's financially or advice or guidance, that's what we do.
So Richard, you now have already 22 franchisees,
Correct.
and
That's
and how many different states is that right now?
so far that would be one, two, three, I think seven
Okay.
different states. Yes.
That's that's awesome. If you're going to think of the top 5 franchisees, call it the top 25%,
Yes.
what do they all have in common? Were they all painters before?
It's a mix. Actually, no. There's a mix of some were painters, some were not. Truthfully, it's just being dedicated, right? Willing to put the work in, listening, right? You would think that's something easy. One of the things that amazes me the most about franchising are people who buy a franchise but do not want to listen to what you tell them, right? But that's so far I found that's common, more common than I expected.
But Richard, I know plenty of people that get married and then they don't want to listen to each other. And then they sit in separate rooms and watch 2 different TV shows.
And they shouldn't be married anymore. But here's the thing, as much as that is a fact, I have, there are times when you want to say, why am I doing this? This is hard. This is really, really hard. And then it may not work, right? It just may not go the way you hope.
Yeah.
But just like being persistent with getting in touch with you or starting the franchise, they operate.
Yeah.
And so that's
Absolutely.
something I'm trying, that I'm really proud of where, example real quick is a franchisee last year, they would not listen to me if I did it for them. And, their sales last year were mediocre at best, I thought. This year, last year, let's say the whole entire year they did 140,000. Last month I just saw their profit and loss, $48,000. Fucking amazing. I'm going to tell
Yeah.
you that right now
Yeah.
because and these are people who were not business savvy. They were not somebody who had lots of education. It's an immigrant from Ukraine, immigrant from Mexico, and they're together. And it's like that's what Richard Painting is all about. Is about bringing people together, no matter where they come from, but just to help them be successful.
Yeah. No, I love that. And you made a comment, and you said specifically franchising can be difficult. And the reality is it absolutely can be, like I referenced, a marriage, because you're not working by yourself, which by the way is supposed to be a big advantage because you are working and collaborating with other people. People have bought into your system, and it is the craziest thing that people truly don't listen at times.
Yes.
And it's business that's truly hard in general. Franchising is supposed to make that smoother and easier when you actually pick the right franchise. So it's interesting because my next question is, when you're talking about some of the immigrants and really, to be kind, uh, we were all immigrants at one point, but
Yes.
when people first come to this country, it's got to be incredibly challenging. My grandfather was from Poland, that I Still had a hard time understanding him with his heavy, heavy accent, but he figured his way in business ownership as well, before the days of franchising being so big. But my question really is, when it comes to joining a franchise like Richards, do some people say to you, well, why do I need to buy into a franchise? I can do this on my own. And what do you say to that?
So yes, you can, but you can also fail miserably, right? And so, you can do lots of things. Don't get me wrong. There's opportunity for everybody. But with a franchise, you are buying into a system that works. You're going to have somebody there that's got your back, even when you think they don't. We're always going to be here to help you. We're going to help you through the challenging times. Are you going to make mistakes? Yes. Are you going to fail once in a while? Yes. But it's not the failing part, it's how do you react to the failing and how you react to, things that are challenging that you never, the greatest thing that I can say is we have this conversation with new franchisees every time. I tell them that everything that you're worrying about is not going to be the problem. It's going to be the 10 things you never thought of that are going to be the problem. And so, but we have all those answers, and so that's what you're buying, or that's what you're buying into. And so that's really the greatest part about franchising. That's why it's so successful.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit how you help on the training side. So somebody becomes a franchisee. What is the training like? What are the things that they learn that most people are like, man, I didn't know that. Like
Yeah,
some people don't know you're supposed to stir the paint, right?
that's right. There are many things that, that you don't know, but in painting, the business side of it is just as important as the painting side, right? And that's something that we focus on in training, the administrative parts, the office parts, and then the painting is sometimes not even the most important part because it's a funny story is when I was a young kid painting and I tell everybody the same story because it's so true in painting. We went to somebody's house, we painted, and I thought, man, we did the greatest job ever, and then we came back 5 years later, and I'm looking around at this paint job, and I'm like, we were terrible. Like this was horrible. And at the moment, I thought I was really good. And so I tell everybody that story because when they first start painting, they're not going to be perfect. They're not going to be great, right? They're going to have to learn as they go. And over time, we're going to get better and better at it. And so that's to kind of calm their nerves from people worrying about what if the line's not perfect? What if this is not perfect? It doesn't matter. The number one thing that most customers care about, was it a great experience? Were we easy to work with? Did we solve their problems? And typically 80% of our customers will hire you back again, sometimes within a year.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I just love Richard's painting. I love franchising. I love people. I'm just happy to be on this damn show.
Well, I'm happy to have you. So, Richard, let's talk about marketing. A lot of franchisees, when they get in, they don't know anything about marketing. They'd have to hire an agency, or they're going to go hand out leaflets and put them on car windshields, all the old school stuff. What are you doing to support the franchisee's success through marketing? What's the
Well,
launch
we
program like to grand opening, if you will?
Yeah, typically, we are the marketing company for the franchisee. We start out with basic Facebook ads, Google ad search, and we do, the old school way, a combination of everything, whether it's putting yard signs out on corners, doing door hangers, sending out postcards, but also our Facebook ads, typically we start them on their last day of training. And within, sometimes that night, people are getting a lead for painting.
I love it.
And so you can't have anything better than that. And there's locations, I'm not kidding you, Lance. We spend $150 a month on Facebook ads, and they are getting between 15 to 25 leads a month, right? And
Fantastic.
and I and I
And if you get 15 to 25 leads, how many of those generally are you closing?
I'm going to say our average closing rate is 30%. That's our average,
Okay.
and that's typically where we want to be.
Yeah.
And it's price sensitive. When you're first starting out, our advice is you use pricing as marketing. If you're trying to get, your sign out front in people's houses and businesses, if you give a better rate at the beginning, you're going to get more work. You're going to, have other
Yeah.
people see you. And so your brand grows just by being there.
Yeah.
So, marketing is not just creating ads, it's about creating a presence, right? And so the more they see you, the more they're going to hire you.
So the average job size, I know it's going to depend, but generally speaking, how much?
So yeah, so at the very beginning, you're going to start out average job size going to be about 1,500. That's going to be the average.
Okay.
After year one, you're going to be probably up to 2,500 by the end of the year. And then, typically, after, 2, 3 years, you're going to be $5,000 is our average job size by that point.
Yeah. So I did some quick math. You can get about $7,500 in business off of those $150 worth of Facebook ads. And
Yeah.
that was at the bare minimum. That's a heck of an ROI. I love that.
You let everybody know because I think that most people don't believe us.
Yeah.
Everybody believes you got to spend thousands and thousands and thousands, use Home Advisor, use Thumbtack, use all these lead referral services to generate business. But if you have
Yeah.
a good program that works, it's not necessary.
Yeah, not all Facebook ad managers, if you will, are created equal. I love the idea, by the way. It's funny in my community. You see trucks out front of neighbors' houses all the time for every service imaginable. But when you see that yard sign that says, Richard's Painting, I think, as you were suggesting, and you drive by, you see the truck, you see the employee, whatever, you're like, that's I need my house painted. It seems like it's the fear of missing out, right? I mean, especially with exterior painting where people get to see what's going on, right?
100%. It's Richard's Painting, over time, every location that's been open longer and longer, especially our own, it's like almost like a status symbol to have Richard's Painting at your house
Yeah.
and or your business, because we do such a good job of really giving our customers a great experience. And
Yeah.
so, you know, whenever you go do an estimate, for me especially, I still do them because it's part of the training with the new franchisees. People, as soon as I walk in, they're like, "Oh, you're Richard. We hear so much about you. We see your signs everywhere, your trucks, your vans, and we hear you're the best." Right? And so when half your job is done before you, when you walk into that estimate, it makes the rest of it a lot easier.
I love it. So give us one tip or one secret, if you will, that sets you guys apart. What is it that you do specifically? One thing.
I think the
Is it
number
the
one
paint?
thing,
Is it the brush? Is
no,
it, the velvet booties you put on your shoes when you walk in the door? What is it?
truthfully, it's being authentic.
Okay.
Just being real, right? Just giving people what, exceeding their expectations, and setting expectations that can be exceeded,
Yeah.
right? I think that's the easiest thing to do. Many people in our business always oversell and underdeliver. And we try really hard to undersell and overdeliver because if they're in painting, you can only be so perfect, you can only be so great, right?
Yeah.
It's their walls, it's siding, it's peeling paint, it's water damage, whatever the situation is. As long as you solve their problem and you create an environment where they can be really happy and proud of what their house or business looks like. I don't know how else you can win any better.
Yeah. So, you noticed some changes in the world of franchising. I think, you and I were discussing this prior to hitting record today. Why don't you share with that? Because I think that's important because there are thousands of franchises and you're a heck of a nice guy and you seem like anybody's brother or, friend that why not be part of Richard's Painting? I mean, so share with us though what you've seen in the franchise world out there.
Me being a student and trying to learn as much as I can, I feel like I'm more old school, in the franchising world. I feel like, franchising was designed to grow that business to be successful long term, not just in the short term. Many people can, start a fire, right? And get that fire going and that flame is high, and but they run out of wood. Next thing you know, the flame's going out. What do you do? Right? For us, we want to have plenty of wood behind us, right? We want to be able to continue that fire to grow and grow and grow. And when you're doing that on a scale that's, reasonable, where you can, dedicate your time to each franchisee, give them all the tools that you can, give them your attention, you know, trying to be the best franchisor I can be, right? And so when you do that, I think the business takes care of itself. You don't have to sit there and wonder, are they going to be successful? Are they going to make enough money? Are they going to
Yeah.
do this? Right? I give people, just like our customers, realistic expectations, right?
Yeah.
If you're coming to Richards Painting to be a millionaire your first year, you're gonna have to find a different franchise. That's not going to be us,
Yeah.
right? But will you be a millionaire in 10 years? I sure as hell hope so, right? I think it can be done.
Well, and
But
you're also starting just to say support and all that. So I applaud you for all that. Let's talk about support a little bit further. You've mentioned it a whole bunch of times, but I found in franchising, being a franchisee in the past of multiple brands and just watching and observing and helping people get into franchises for many, many years, support and marketing are the two things. If something's going wrong within a brand, those are two of the biggest complaints. I don't know where my marketing dollars are going. And I think obviously you have that well covered. I'm sure your franchisees are very happy with your marketing and the results. But talk a little bit about support. How do you support the franchisees to make sure, franchising, a lot of people speak about, it's like having a business with guardrails. You keep track of what they're doing, you keep them on track, if you will. So how are you helping them on a regular basis with their business?
that's a great question.
Thank
Lots of great questions. You're
you.
good. You're good. Um,
Thanks.
the experience of support is actually dictated by the franchisee, because every franchisee has different needs. Not every single one is going to have the same problems. Whether it's marketing, whether it's, efficiencies at the job site, whether it's hiring the right people, whether, whatever those circumstances are, what our job is try to help them be as successful as they can be in their environment, right? Because and personalities, dictate a lot of the a lot of the support. But what we do is, we have quarterly meetings, monthly meetings, and it goes beyond that, like just texting me, texting people, emailing, doing everything you can, right? There's no limit to the support, right? It's not like, well, in our world, like it's, how do you, oh, marketing's not working, I'll spend more money. No, maybe let's reevaluate. What are we spending our money on? Have you went out and did door hangers? Have you went out and done, and we're going to talk about it before we just say spend more money, because
Yeah.
I've seen other brands where how do you solve the marketing problem? More money. And I don't believe in that. I think that there are, we're just not maybe doing what we already have effectively. So we're going to get out and try to make it effective. And so when, we show up to I go out and do a site visit, and watching how the job runs, and talking to to the owner, to whoever's maybe managing the project, seeing how the painting is being done. Hey, then we come back and we talk about it. How could this be better? The job site, I show up sometimes and damn, it's a mess and I'm mad, right? I don't let everybody know at the moment, but what do? I actually stop everybody and say, hey, let's clean this up and let's
Yeah.
refocus. And so support is not just, having a whiteboard and saying do A, B, C, and this is what you need to do. And if you're not doing it, well, good luck, right? Because every market is different also. The weather is different. In the wintertime, you're going to be up in Michigan, or you could be down in Florida. You have different perspectives, right? So you can't use the same tools. So
Yeah.
just to touch on support, it's just, for us, it's just being there as much as you possibly can to give them as much opportunity to be successful.
Yeah. Love that. Richard, you've been awesome. It's so wonderful to finally get you on the show. So final thoughts, final words of wisdom for the audience today.
Well, the number one thing I would always say is, about starting a business, because I think the number one problem people have with starting a business is they're scared of what can go wrong. And I challenge that. And I always say, well, what if it all works? Right? And what if everything does work? So the worst thing to do is to have the fear of failing and never doing it. I would rather fail knowing I tried than to know I didn't even give it a chance.
Yeah.
So that's my number one thing to do, in any business, whether it's Richard's Painting, McDonald's, it doesn't matter in the world, or starting your own landscaping business and getting a lawnmower and getting out there and doing it, right? It doesn't matter the business, but you have to try it to even know if it'll work. So to me, that's the number one place to start. Don't be scared to try.
Yeah. Love that. Well, thank you so much again for being here. Look forward to meeting you face to face soon enough. And thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you so much.
If you're ready to talk about franchise opportunities, hit the link below to schedule a call. My services are free. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for listening.